Oh, good afternoon. Welcome to the Dream Labs. It's good to have everybody on board here in the Rackle Crackle. Boy, nice to have you on board here today. Nice. I just saw your name come up, and it was really good to have you on board again. So hope you're well. And again, I think where you located again, in the city or the state, or out of town or what? Let me know. And again, so good to have you on board. And we'll go through some things here today that are really intriguing. This is a great project, I think, that I'd worked on. But before I start here, I just want to point out how much I really regretted last Wednesday's situation. I got ready to fly and cranked all the machinery up, and all of a sudden we lost the desk camera. And we went for about maybe 30 to 45 minutes to get that thing straightened out, but it just wouldn't behave. And all of a sudden we had to cancel. But this week we're all ready to go. And I think it's going to be an interesting, intriguing little setup here as far as the design concept goes. I'll give you a little bit of background before I show you some of the sketches here. It was interesting that some time ago, I was one of my former students is Ryan Pavlicek. He's a director of Motorsports or Powersports group at Honda, a lot of off-road ATV materials and things of that nature. Great stuff. And Ryan gave me a call and said, hey, we didn't have to come up and take a look at maybe some concept work here for an ATV process piece and also some interior design work. So it turned out to be more of an interior design project. That again, and along the way, we did some conceptual work for the exterior as well. So what you'll see here throughout the day, a series of little sketches. I'm going to spend more time on the IP because that was probably the most complicated one we had to deal with. We got went up there, had the meeting with the engineering team and the design team, manufacturing team up at Honda, and next thing you know, we're looking at this material and the actual exterior, very typical ATV piece itself. It was much more of a kit car piece, a very injection molded pieces, a lot of tubing and framing, a very kit car kind of approach where you actually customize some of the panel work on the actual exterior itself. But the biggest dilemma they had was that the interior fitting changed a little bit. It was narrowed up a little bit because of some of the circumstances. And the one that was on the road to commercially right now, present vehicle, was a very Spartan looking interior piece. And I got a lot of feedback from the consumers that were buying these things for more of an IP system or an instrument panel that had some storage and a little more character to it and a little bit more pleasing to look at as opposed to just a 2x4 with some gauges and some power processing in it and a very big lack of storage as well. So, pardon me, as long as we got that started, and then what took place was this is some of the maybe just two sketches I kind of pulled from file about what the actual character, what they're after was a lot of high lean, for example, off-road, a lot of ground clearance because of suspension systems and terrain contouring and the like, and so they wanted a very high profile, very simple, open-minded thing here. Good to be here. It's been a long, yeah, it really has been. Good to have you on board, Rackle Crackle. Neat stuff. So they wanted a very high-profile piece with a lot more wedge to it, a little more sinister looking, very sheer panel work and the like. So these little thumbnail sketches sort of got us started with some of this all open air, two-seater. But again, part of that whole process was to get this theme down. And then once that, we worked back and forth with the exterior people. And once we got that all settled, for example, they had a design direction. I've not seen what that looks like, but nonetheless, they did have a design direction. So they turned over the IP piece, instrument panel piece to us. So I'm going to go through that. Remember now, the whole premise was because the width changed, they pulled the A-pillars in a little bit, which changed the entire contour for an instrument panel to nest inside the actual frame itself, inside the tube work. And in the first one we looked at, for example, we did a series of sketches that were just very plain, very simple, almost 2x4 like, a very flat surface across from pillar to pillar, with some netting underneath for storage and a very simple IP instrumentation pod. And that really didn't fly well with some of the consumer feedback. And from their input, that's what they thought they were going to go after. Only to find out that when the feedback came in, they wanted much more of a very fluid-looking, very simple, almost counterpoint to the exterior. The exterior is very sheer, very hard-edged, and very much fab-looking and modular-looking. But they want a much more smoother approach to the instrument panel on the interior. So here we go. I'm going to show you some of the progress here, starting from some of the sketches from early on here. So let's put this side by side. Here's an idea. Look at the difference in the character here, for example. Let me get this lined up. Look at the difference between the exterior character, very sheer, very hard-edged, and then also much more fluid. These are some of the beginning of some of the early, just real quick pen sketches that we delivered and started to work with the Honda gang up at Marysville. So there we are. There was the first pass at it. Just I'm going to go through some really quick things here. Notice they wanted some open storage and concealed storage with a lot of cup container work and a very conventional instrumentation package up on top. Then he wanted to go to maybe a full crash pad. This would be all molded, for example, be all hard skin or injection molded. But we kind of, hey, Doug, how you doing, Chief? How's everything? Good to have you on board, and nice to chat with you earlier on today, Doug. This is a very expansive program. It took a lot of time to work with this thing to get the theme down. Oh, by the way, time span here, for example, for a long time for Honda, this was done from day one to the end of the process, about 4 to 5 weeks. So we really had to fly on this thing. We provided all the, we had to do the engineering drawing and make sure it fit between the pillars and all that. So it was a really pretty intensive piece. So again, the first blush was just a very quick series of sketches with a little bit of slotting here for storage, cup containers, conventional invitation, and a pop open area with maybe a radio and so forth. And that was really kind of a funny part of it. I said, what radio? Who needs a radio on an ATV thing? You're flying through the woods, don't need that. So let me go through these sketches very quickly. So there's the first sketch at it here. There's another patch side by side, another family of forms next to it here to kind of give you some idea of where we started. Now a little bit more modular, again, IP and storage on this end, much more of a coming forward, riveted into the cabin itself for storage. And some pop-up, maybe a weather piece, a very simple instrumentation up on top there. Variation of this theme as well. Same thing, very simple speedo. Some heads-up material and a display system and storage and other matters along the way here. So that was 2. Then into 3, I'm going to keep them side by side. This is going to give you some contents here. And now, a lot more fluid. Again, this is where it started to shift on us, for example. They didn't want a very straightforward approach, 2x4 instrumentation. They want something a little bit more elegant to kind of counterpoint the exterior itself. So this is the third pass we did here. Again, notice very fluid. It's kind of nesting the instrumentation side of it hollow here and coming back rivered with the storage system. And again, another approach, elevation, and another approach what this elevation would look like in the perspective study. So notice, I mean, one of the things we do here, and I think one of the things I've really been really adamant about, when I'm assigned let me drop these down so we get a little more, yeah, there we are, that's better space-wise on the screen here. When I'm assigned a project to deal with individuals on, I mean, I really take a lot of time to go through a lot of different variations on theme. Is that dangerous to do? No, I don't think so. I think to me, it's respecting the fact that someone's come along to ask you to do some work with them, give them all the options they need. Again, all these sketches you'll see here throughout the course of the day, we're not just me going out there as a lone ranger and creating sketches. We develop a group, set it out there, get some feedback, and then come back and refine some things or change direction. So it's all part of that communication process we talk about all the time here on this program. Far greater to respect your client, to understand, give them some things that they're looking for, and then go overboard with that expectation and come back and refine what they need to see. Here's another set here. Into the fifth sketch, again, notice again, very expansive, bringing the whole concept of, instead of going negative against the pillar of the A-line, coming forward and rivered with it. Plan view study, again, a lot of storage, cup container, big, wide area for a display, a pop-up display, storage, and maybe some little nibs and nebulous areas for storage. A very simple little instrumentation pod. But again, just keeping things simple, but at the same time, a little more elegant, so it's not so bare bones looking, so rugged looking. So there's another sketch here. We go down the line here. There's another variation on theme. Notice a little theme sketch here. Again, this is more of a closed body piece. One of the things that we went through in the entire process was, it going to be open air like the first sketch I showed you, or is it going to be more of a closed body piece where they can put skins around it and make it more of an off-road vehicle as opposed to an ATV? So again, instrument panel, very square, very, very geometric. And again, going back, notice from compound from the geometric back to the organic and so forth. There's another family of sketches that we've dealt with. We go back here. Now another little theme sketch here. Now it starts to get a little more fluid. I think now things that start to open up a little bit. Back to, again, this organic look where it's very, very round and very form related. And coming back in here with some storage on the ends, some information center here. And again, notice heads up display or instrumentation and small little pod up front. Or the variation here to replace that little pod with an actual instrumentation cluster. So that's another way to look at this guy. Pardon me here. And moving along here, another family of sketches. A lot more elaborate here. Pardon me. This becomes a lot more fluid in terms of the very vertical storage bins, Again, a very coming riveted a little bit, and a little span across the actual form itself, cut containers on the end, and again, a very center pod relationship with instrumentation up on top. And again, another variation of the theme here, coming in forward and then cutting back in, and then back again to the pillar to pillar. Little variation of look, and again, this would be a little replacement for that. They wanted either a small heads-up digital display, or they want to go to a very full complement of package, fuel oil and speedo, for example. So that was another approach that we were looking at here. But very just interesting things to look at and exploratory to no end. I mean, every time we go through a series of passes with these sketches, we come up with another piece of information. Well, maybe it's more storage, maybe it's less storage, maybe it's more instrumentation, less instrumentation. So it moved all the time, which I thought was healthy because it gave us a chance to really focus on the number one theme, was to find the right balance of a nice fluid shape on the interior to kind of give this thing some presence. So what do you think, Doug? So far, so good? And Rackle Crackle, you still with me? It's making sense. Hope I'm not going too quickly here. I just want to give us enough variety here to kind of look at what's taking place from the actual conceptual side of what we do, and especially working with a client like Honda. Very, very unique group of individuals, talented to no end, very focused, at the same time, very much open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. But this one was a pretty restrictive one. They already had the shell already set. And our task was to come in and put some of the skins around it and help them with the exterior work. But at the same time, take a look at some really interesting interior pieces that would give them that little bit upstep luxury. And then I wouldn't talk about something a la Rolls Royce type, but a little bit more fluid in terms of not being so much rugged interior space on this thing. And again, it was a two-seater, so it was all open air, a lot of storage behind the bin and so forth, behind the seats. So that was all part of the package brief as well. So here we go, to move along here. Another set of family of sketches. Once again, very straightforward rearward, coming down and dropping into the passenger compartment. Let's be a little pod detail of what that might look like, for example, with the instrumentation bird inside this little molded little canopy piece up on top of the IP itself. Another variation of the same thing. They always wanted to go back to, I think it was interesting too, nothing changed as far as getting a center stack where some either storage or information would be put together here to kind of put it all together and maintain the consistency of the actual shape itself. Also, really did not drift too far from very large cup containers on the outboard ends, so that was part of the process as well. And very deep, and at the same time, very almost moved in or molded into the actual form itself once it's all said and done. So there's another little study here. We go back in again. Little section detail here about what this might look like. Again, this is all storage tray up on top, storage beneath. Against IP instrumentation here. Again, a little detail of what that might look like section-wise. Comes off the cowl itself and then down into the form, and then a very interesting little series of shapes. Really quick sketches. They don't take an awful lot of time. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time going through detailing. These are more of a, what I refer to as a very lucid approach to looking at different shapes and forms that I'm listening to from the feedback from the engineering group up at Honda. Sometimes they're very sheer, sometimes very organic, sometimes a combination of both. So there's always a balancing act here, but I think the idea for us to look through here was to really give them enough variety to kind of begin to put some pieces together about likes and dislikes. And again, this is a little section. Look how sheer this thing is. Defroster, if they needed it. There's a glass panel there. Into storage, into IP, instrumentation, storage down below, and then the basic form of section. Notice this first inside piece would be that portion, then it's the river portion comes out and gets more into the actual passenger compartment area here. So another family of real quick sketches, looking at some plan views and perspective, going much more sheer now. It's really fun to go back and look at the review of this thing because it just it moved from one side of the scope to the other side of the scope, meaning scale, for example, very organic, and back to sheer. Is it sheer? Should we kind of, this came through a family of sketches, for example, that they were looking at to kind of go back and match the exterior, which is extremely hard-edged, very fabricated looking and very modular looking. So we came back to some of these plan view studies here, what those shapes might look like, and putting in a little bit of perspective so they could see and evaluate if that was the format they wanted to go to. So let me stop for a moment and take a bit of a break here. Any questions or concerns here, gang? Making sense so far? I mean, I'm going through this a long study, but nonetheless, very, very much involved in putting the pieces together from point A through Z to make sure that they were all delivered here in terms of the right process. Well, pardon me again. Another approach, this closed body piece might be, for example, down the line. One of the conversations that came up throughout the entire process was that they were looking at a bare bones ATV process, but the shell would be there, the wheelbase would be set, all the dimensions and body and weight systems would be really set. But then eventually they'd take that same package and do a mini, almost like a mini closed bodied SUV or ATV van type off of that same platform. So that's why you see some of these sketches coming in. This is all part of that conversation where you close the body off at the same time, give it some personality and character to it. And then look at again, instrument panel shape, whether it's this family or that family or going back to organic again. That was whole method behind the madness here. So once again, what do you think, Doug? Rackle Crackle, so far so good? Hopefully it's been an impact. Any questions so far? Or am I covering? I'm trying to cover everything as thoroughly as I possibly can here to let you see the scope or the scale of some of the work we do here in terms of putting together an instrument panel. It's not that, it's a very formidable task because there's so many pieces to work with. We had a platform to work with, a width to work with, height to work with, depth in the IP area itself. So it was not a situation where we got a blank check. A lot of things to deal with here. So there we are. And now back to some just basic thumbnail sketches again. A little bit more complicated now. I think that when you get into things like this, to me, that's a countermeasure from where we are as far as theme goes. It was much more, this is probably a lot more almost Cadillac or luxury look, and it just had too much sheerness to it, and too many pieces and parts going all over the place here. Like fold out storage areas and concealed storage underneath, fold out cup containers, for example. Something about it just didn't feel ATV type. Just amazing. Oh, hey, Doug, thanks very much. Yeah, I'm prolific in it. So, well, you've been there, and so is Rackle Crackle. You guys have been there. You develop an idea, and you begin to look at this stuff, and you start to really expand upon the ideas you're dealing with. Let me just move this over a little bit so we get more clearance out of that area in the corner. You start to expand this stuff, and then one thing leads to another, and the motivation gets stronger. And the prolific side of it is, I mean, I'm just, as you well know, you and I have worked together for a long time. I just really deliver the goods as best I can. I don't treat it lightly. I have a lot of respect for the clients I work with, and then they hopefully like with me. And I'm not going to disappoint them just doing 2 or 3. Let's give them a range of things to think about to let them see that, number one, we're really on board with their project. Number 2, we have great concern for the end result. Number 3, it's going to promote their product in the marketplace. And then eventually it comes back to us. It's our reputation at stake. So I think that's why the prolific side of me just keeps cranking ideas. And it doesn't bother me. And again, I hope I can say this in the right spirit. So I'll take it in the right spirit. When I sit down to draw, I can crank out maybe 10, 15 sketches in about 20 minutes. I just spit right through them. And it's just fun. It's just a joy to be a part of the process. They're not great, but at least I'm generating ideas. And I think that's the thing that I'm inspired by. One idea will make another. Oh, what about this part? Oh, let's try that. Let's try that. Just keeps them snowballing. So it's great fun to be on board with. So again, the bottom line for this family of sketches, these two, they're just a little bit too passenger car-like. Not enough off-road or kind of spirit of that simplicity about them. There's another going back to some basic organic stuff. Notice we even tried. This was I remember this sketch specifically up on the wall. They said, "Well, we can't wrap into the pillars because there aren't any pillars or door frames. It's all open space." Oh yeah, that's right. So that's one of the things we get caught in the trap. For example. For the bare bones ATV process that you're dealing with, the open bodied modular piece, that wrap would not occur. However, we put that together for this premise. They did mention the fact that down through the ages, when this thing begins to go, we'll start looking at maybe doing a closed bodied form, which does have pillars and glass. So that was part of the rationale behind this little sketch. To give them some idea that you could do this and still make it work with cup containers, some information storage, drop-down pod, again, storage again for cup containers, and then some modular areas in the middle for storage if needed. And again, a little lockable storage box in the middle of this thing. So now back to some just bare bones, simple elevations. At this juncture here, it was really interesting. Once we went through all these sketches, for example, and this, let me tell you, folks, what you're seeing here is just but a very small little portion of the stuff we generated for this whole program. But when all was all said and done, we finally got to the place where they slowed it all down and said, we like the idea of the following: straightforward shape, a very raised area in the center, and again, modular in terms of maybe some storage pieces, some switches, a very simple pot up on top for instrumentation, maybe an iPhone holder, and a very simple area up on top for maybe some mapping devices or some GPS materials to work with it. So all of a sudden we started to slow it all down, and notice all the shapes down, the reversing itself. Now it's coming in, and this was the actual anchor point here. That little section there was the anchor point into which this whole thing would tie into. So we had to be really careful to not exceed that in both the width and also the depth, and also the depth and inside the vehicle and the depth of cowl. So these are just a series of elevation studies. Now slowing it all down, getting into what do we look at here? What's this form starting to do? Are we looking at, for example, that approach? Is it much more fluid? And this, is it much more linear in some cases? And again, a little treatment of the sheerness in here and the sheerness in here. But again, notice I really like that idea of that round or that swelled area up on top, swollen area up on top to give a little more presence to it. Then coming off of that with a power dome or an IP pad system in the center line of the vehicle to kind of give it some presence here. So there we are. And again, another series of elevations. This was a request from them to just take a look at a family of sketches, elevation, so we can see what the scale might look like, what the character might look like. So again, this was one family, another family here. Notice now we came back in and dropped that surface in, just looking at variations on theme. And I think that's one of the nice things about the design process. Once you start the whole process of moving it and beginning to generate it, now you have variations on theme. Maybe it's wider, narrower, taller, shorter, wider. Again, that whole theme changes. And when you make those little adjustments, it forces you into an area of different thinking areas to kind of solve the problem. So that's what these guys did. Is it more of this look? Is it more of that look? How do we treat this dome up on top to make it become part of the process in the design phase of the entire operation here? So let's go back and look at this guy here. Then I'll come back up. Now, from there, into some perspectives. These are not in sequence here, but just some perspective sketches. Notice again, this is the actual, this pod area here is where the IP, the steering wheel would come off. And on top of that, maybe eventually, probably a snap-in pod for instrumentation as opposed to being located at the center line of the vehicle. Phone area here, storage coming off. And again, notice there's that block area here. This little area here was really critical. That's where we had to tie into pillar to pillar, and we couldn't violate that. We could come up and go rearward with it. We had to make sure that that width was right on the money. And when this is all said and done, I'll refer to it again later on in the presentation. When it was all said and done, we took these sketches and actually worked with our engineering staff to develop a prototype and molded it to make sure it fit, and everything worked really well. So very pleased about that. So again, going from elevations into some perspective sketches about what we were looking at here to kind of develop this form, and we go from there. So there we are. I'm at the top here again. Another variation on theme, a little bit larger, barge-like, very, very heavy-looking piece. But again, notice, again, coming off of this whole, with the steering wheel and pod area, a lot more storage, just bringing that little section river and maintaining the cup containers. And again, that's still swollen. Notice how we took that dome we talked about earlier and really expanded it to give it more presence inside the actual vehicle itself. So that was it. And then coming back to this guy here, there we are. Another variation on theme. We're actually really slumped this whole process. We're actually dove into the actual shape itself. And again, same pod up front. And again, a little bit of a piece of architecture for the foam and IP areas here, cup container. And in this case, a lockable storage area here that they can facilitate. What you don't see here, well, it's on the other side. There's the same, the very mirror image cup containers on the process itself to get this thing squared away. Yeah, now, there we are. Another variation on theme here. Just looking at putting a little bit of shadow in this lip over the top, coming in underneath that, and really kind of a little bit of storage, cupping in that same structural piece. And again, that same crown, but this is recessed now, so it comes forward and it drops in a little bit and gives you some variation of theme to work with here. So this whole family of forms really dealt with, for example, starting out, once we went through a whole series, or maybe about a week or two's worth of work with a lot of variety of theme, we came back in and said, oh, let's slow it down and do some elevations. So let's look at what that shape will look like. Now, once we have that set, let's move into some variation on theme perspective. What is that going to look like when you're sitting behind the wheel, piloting this vehicle? So here we go, another set. Now this is where it got interesting. Now we switch gears. We had a design set ready to go. Notice again, pillar to pillar, one theme. This is not the final design, but again, looking at the actual base shape itself and putting together all the structural pieces, for example, this is all part of the process of that pillar combination coming off of the A pillar, And we're to nest in the IP. In red, it gives us a section outline. And again, this is the area here that comes off of the actual IP, steering column, etc. And again, start to look at a little bit more serious in terms of what does the section look like, and how do these pieces, this is all structure underneath. For example, this material here, that's a cross-member piece that goes across, ties into the pillars itself. So all those cross-member pieces had to be cleared and had some distance in between, especially for storage, if we need to cut into that. We just kept pulling the IP rearward to give that presence and activate that look in the actual shape itself. So there's one, here's another one, and look at the same thing. Notice a very different theme here. Again, looking at different ways of looking. Again, this is that same setup. There's that pillar system, structural materials underneath the actual IP itself. This is a little bit more of a pancake look or a modular look, where you've got maybe replaceable systems up on top, a common GPS program, center storage, and again, cups and so forth, and then lockable storage on the sides. Back to some perspective sketches again. Putting some section through this thing. Now taking advantage of that whole center area and making a whole different character to it. Cup containers, section study coming through here, and again, storage, IP, phone storage area, and again, another variation on theme, what that might look like if we soften that whole shape up on top and bring that whole form and then integrate that into the center stack where the information is. So let's go around the line here. There's another variation on theme here. Looking at, again, really funny part, they wanted to introduce some leather in this thing, so that's why you see this tone change in here. Maybe a little bit more elegant, put some leather in combination with a molded piece that they can actually put like a surface change in it. So again, a little section detail of what that might look like. This guy coming off of that one, section wise. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of going into a material change. I don't think it really needs it. It should be very, very simply done. If anything, maybe it's a tone on tone. Maybe it's a black molded piece or a dark body color with an accent piece in it. That could, for example, black with maybe a charcoal on top and then maybe a nice little accent red lace of some sort. Something to give it a little more zing to it, as opposed to being a really full material change. It just doesn't seem, leather didn't seem to really fit the bill for me, and them as well. So again, there's another little set sketches. Again, this one had some presence to it, and I think they started to look at this one in terms of, notice a little bit of offset here, so the section changed a little bit, has a little bit of dip in it, but it has a nice simple look to it in terms of where the phone might be, or else IP, again, storage, etc., cup containers. And again, very simple. It has that same kind of dome to it, but it changes it in the plan view. That shape comes rearward, so it kind of gives you a little bit of a different setting in there. So I'm going to do these up so I get in the way. There we are. Thank you. Very interesting how that all comes together in terms of simple little things like maybe offsets and shadow and shape. As you all know, Doug, little subtle changes like that and the radical crack will make a huge difference. You can have a very elegant piece, very simple form, but how you begin to treat that with shadow and weight changes in the actual surface itself and material changes make a huge difference. So let's move along here. It's another little section study, and here's another variation on theme. We still kept exploring a lot of different, notice we kept a little bit of that same character on this one, a little bit of offset right through here into the actual center stack. Same thing here. And again, a little bit different here. We actually raised that up to give it that dome look that we're after. And again, very well received. Some of these themes were really well received and started to become more applicable for the actual final piece itself. This is a good example of what we talked about as far as materials go. This could be a very light or dark area in here. Again, back to a dark area on top. If this goes black, that could go silver, that could go charcoal. Just little simple things like that can make an enormous difference in the overall presentation piece here. And so here we are. We're going to go back down the line here with this, 26. And again, now we got into some things where it really started to take on some notes here about what this thing might look like. I highlight the storage display, the iPhone, steering column area, what they wanted off the steering column shroud it might look like. Steering column comes off here. iPhone in front of you, for what reason, I don't know, but that was one of the requests that came from the engineering staff. And I think that the request also came from some of the feedback from some of the marketing people that were looking at putting this whole process together. So again, just looking at ways of putting this whole piece together. coming right down to final details and a lot of section work. What you're not going to see here is a lot of the engineering work we dealt with there. That was their private, obviously, exclusive rights to hang on to that. But we take these sketches once the final design was set and then moved into, here's another variation while we're at it here, with this final little piece here of what that might look like as far as nesting that telephone in the area here. This whole family of forms went on and on and on, developing more of the section work in the actual case itself, and it became a very, very interesting set of circumstances for the actual project itself. And I think basically, I mean, go back through all these pieces, there's a lot of things to be done here. Let me just go back and stack these up. And what they look like here, now, that's that. But again, look at the difference, for example. Let me find a couple, let me find a sketch here that kind of mirrors what we're after. That final form began to look more like, if I find the final theme here, some of those earlier. Some of the elevations, I think you'll get a better understanding where we were here with this final design and what it might look like. That final design really came up more like this. I think this is very close to what they were dealing with as far as finished piece itself. So if you look at this layout here, this is what we had as far as the interior, very close to this, and also what that exterior would look like. Again, notice how two different schools of thought here, which was really a surprise to me, was the fact that all of a sudden we have one school saying extremely sheer, very geometric, highly modular, interchangeable, a lot of different things going on. Let me move that up just a bit here. There we are, and just a little bit with it. There we are. Get those guys on the same screen, balanced out here. But again, this wasn't the final, but that same theme was really echoed. For example, very, very, very simple slope, very mounded center area, kind of come above the cowl line to give them a little more presence with some storage underneath this thing. And again, lockable and information center in the middle. And the telephone, actually, as you saw in the last few sketches, came from this location over the top of the steering wheel pod, and then that became the information center. So it was all interchangeable in a sense. And I think that was one of the nice things about the program as well. It became very much of an interchangeable program where you had maybe a basic substrate, changing panels, for example, open body, closed body, panel changes in the actual exterior, and the same thing was holding true in the interior as well. So a very interesting project, and I think, again, I want to stress, this is just, but some of the sketches we dealt with, my goodness, they were all over the place. We had just one run review after another, just covering the walls with ideas and having great feedback from the actual staff up there about what was taking place as far as what they wanted to do with it and putting it all together. So very interesting thing. And I think we'll hopefully in time here, once we get some information back from them, this is still, from what I understand, under production in terms of what the theme is going to be. Still looking at possibilities, and I think it hasn't been released yet, but again, really privileged for us to be a part of that, for me to be a part of that process. And again, my former student, Ryan Pavlicek, was a chief designer, managing manufacturing engineering director up there at Honda. He called me and said, hey, we need to have you come in and take a look at this thing, and I was happy to do so. And we got great feedback, and as a result of that, we started doing some work with them on some accurate work. It just one leads to another. So very, very fortunate, and so far. But I thought you'd get a kick out of seeing some very simple, like an ATV program, for example, an instrument panel study. There wasn't a lot of elegance to it, but we try to give it that character that they were looking for, which turned out very well, I think. As I said, it was not a matter of just the old approach was just a very simple plank across from pillar to pillar with some gauges stuck into it, maybe a telephone thing up on top. It was very simple, Spartan, very bare bones, and a lot of feedback from their client base who purchased these things. They were not happy with the fact there wasn't enough storage. It wasn't really, didn't really fit the paradigm or the actual concept of the benchmarks that they're looking for in the ATV family itself. And I think this program, for what it's worth here, in conclusion, was the forerunner and the beginning of a concept study for Honda that would move away from typical ATV processing into off-road materials, interchangeability, companion pieces, platform changes, platform compatibility, opened up a whole new set of circumstances from the manufacturing people and the engineering people to look at. They had a common platform now into which they could build 4 or 5 models off of that, which in this case was the open body, very tubular modular piece into maybe an closed body system by just maybe changing the wheelbase, a plus or minus process, for example, like Detroit does, and many of the coupes and sedans. So that opened up, it was a whole new benchmark for them, and that closing here for me. Very much I'm very grateful for the fact to be invited to be a part of that process, to see what's happening in that realm of the industry, and being a part of the team, develop a whole new platform of looks for it. So let me stop there from anybody. Crackle, you still with me? And Doug, are you there? What do you think overall? Does this make sense for you? I mean, it's a very, very confined, very limited presentation here about what the entire project was, but it gives you enough information, hopefully, to kind of put it together. So good to have you on board, Doug, and also Crackle. You joined us the school year so far? So far, so good? I'll just stop here and wait for some presentation. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. No doubt, Doug. Very different. The Powersports group at Honda is completely different from the automobile side of it. There's a lot less restriction. There's a lot more, I think, innovation going on. They take a look at different materials and chances and systems and the like, both the color, the graphics, decal work, a lot of very different set of circumstances than the actual automobile concern. So it's a lot more of it's not as risky. But at the same time, you have to be very careful. You kind of maintain the paradigm that they build, or the platform that they're working in, or the spectrum that they're working in. But very lucid group of people, terrific gang. So at any rate, that was looking good, gang. So far, we've got 3 eye. And Crackle, you still there? How about you? How you doing? Good? So again, I was really pleased to be able to put this thing on. This is part of the plan for last week until we had that camera problem. But that became part of the process. We opened that up and finally got that resolved. For some odd reason, it just does that every now and then. I don't know why. Everything else works well, but sometimes we lose the desk cam, which is the most important part of it all, to kind of put these presentations together. And so again, this was the actual Honda Powersports ATV concept project that was done for Honda, and a great thing to work with. And I just want to make an announcement before we turn out here today. We are finally in the process of putting the final wraps on the new drcontrast.com website. On that, you'll see some very interesting things. I went back and looked at something about a month or so ago, and it just didn't tell the story about what I was doing. Great person I work with. I have no disrespect for Jimmy. He did a tremendous job, but we wanted to open up a little bit more, and I think you'll see the new website is much more interactive. We're adding a gallery that's all video related, a lot of different things going on there. We're adding some shorts. We're moving the whole platform from one area up into all of YouTube. So a lot of neat things are happening there, but if you get a chance, I don't know if we've got the video up yet. I've been doing a lot of filming in the studio of just basic sketches and doing some empathy strikes, put in the background of some of the introductory pieces for the website itself. Extremely interactive, and I think far more adventuresome. And we're adding a new store. We're going through Shopify. We're going to add all my work, for example, from Star Citizen, the automobile, the product work, and aircraft work up on the site for purchase, both in t-shirt form and also in print form. So that's going to be fun to deal with. But I'm really excited about the fact that the whole new look is, and I hope I can say this with respect, so don't misunderstand. The whole new look on the website is what I do. It's more active. It's more interactive. There's much more energy going on in terms of sketches and video displays and some short work, and we'll be changing that from time to time. And the store will be actually exciting as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it all come together, and a lot of work behind the scenes. I want to thank Michael Tees at this stage of the game for his input, and also Jimmy Rimanowski, who did the initial work on the Dr. Contrast site, which was terrific. And even Jimmy just said, oh, we need to go ahead, we need to make changes here. We're just going to refresh this thing. So we're going to refresh it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And when you get a chance to look at it, please drop me a note and send me some feedback on what you think about the new site. And again, it's drcontrast.com. And I always, and if you have any information, for example, that you're working on, or if I can be an assistance to you project-wise, whether it's basic sketches or fundamental mechanical work or basic perspective studies, I'm going to do more of that once we get this site up. I'm going to go back into more very brief 5-minute lesson plans and so forth. So we're going to change the entire character of that as well. But from every Wednesday when I go live, it may be a different subject matter, as we'll do next week. Might do something a little different, some maybe some architectural pieces, whatever I've been working on, and we'll go from there. So really great to have you on board, all of you. Thank you so much for the time. Tremendous to have you on board itself. And also, if you could take a look at drcontrast.com, the new website, looking forward to that. And I always sign up for this because it's the most important part of the entire presentation, and that is, boy, really great to have you on board. And again, never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks so much, gang. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday at the whole new project. And take care, and all the very best. Thanks very much.